Hi, and welcome to another episode of Walleye Chronicles, where I bring you guys in off the street, have a conversation about fishing, because there's nothing better than having a conversation about fishing. Today, my guest is been all around. Everybody knows him. You kind of think of him as the Ned Flanders of fishing, but much better than Ned Flanders. It's Joe Okada. How you doing today, Joe?
I'm good. How are you?
Awesome. So we fished against each other a couple times. You've always gotten the best of me. So I've kind of watched you fish. I've seen you fish, and what I love is you're kind of like a true old school river rat kind of guy.
No,
You're
I'm a
not?
what I'm a growing river rat.
Oh, oh, that's you.
That's been one of my biggest weaknesses forever. And so I just kind of devoted the last few years to getting better on rivers, and I've had some really good teachers along the way. So
I'd say because your videos and the stuff you put out has been absolutely awesome. The amount of detail that you go into each kind of tactic and how you're doing, you're really able to pick a lot of things up from your videos.
well, thank you. I'll start to make a few more now that I don't have to fish quite so much. So a
So,
little more time behind the computer.
right. So kind of want to get back to, I don't know much about you. So I kind of want to start from the beginning. Where'd you grow up and when did you start fishing?
Started fishing since, well, I learned that I just wanted to fish since I was 6 years old and grew up around Madison, South Central Wisconsin area. So the Madison Chain of Lakes is my home bodies of water, and just grew up learning each of those, and then started to guide on the chain here right out of high school, and did that for almost 20 years, and then started mixing in, tournament fishing during that time, so I could expand beyond the Madison chain and just keep trying to grow as an angler.
So did you always want to be, you're going to be in fishing and that's it? Or was there anything else in your mind of growing up?
I've always I've always wanted to figure out a way to make a living doing something fishing related. And then the tournament, the competitive part of tournament fishing drove me to improve skill sets, and then the guiding was a way to stay on the water day to day, and just figure out a way to create a business model, tying those in together. And that led to a bunch of other things too, career wise. I was able to make some contacts with companies in the marine or and fishing marine industries, where I basically became a one-man ad agency for some companies, and I'm still doing that to this day to pay most of the bills, and I get to fish on top of that. So it's a good gig.
So do you remember the first outing you had? Did you have did your family fish a lot, or just kind of you, or how'd that go back in the day?
Yeah, Grandpa Zian, or my mom's dad, had an old tri-haul, and the first time we took that out, I remember we went out there and just trolled little Cleos, 30 feet behind the boat at 3 miles an hour, and just creamed white bass trolling, and that was super exhilarating. I mean, we didn't know what we were doing, and when we still saw a cooler full of white bass in there, that was really gratifying to see all that come together. And um, and then I do remember bluegill trips. When my dad was busy at work, mom would take me around the local lakes or rivers, or creeks, so I could just go dunk on some panfish or bass to pass the time. But never a moment where I just did not want to be fishing.
So did you do anything else, like any sports in high school, or just that was your thing, was fishing?
I did a little roller hockey for a while. I used to be a rollerblading coach when I worked at a sports and fitness center in a small town south of Madison, and did that for a while. But the minute the shift was over, I was hooking up whatever boat I owned at the time, and made it out to the lake.
So we know you're a Yarcraft guy. Actually, watching you and your Yarcraft convinced me with some others to get a Yarcraft myself, and I love the boat. But what was your first boat that you started off with? What the first one that
Nice.
you bought, paid your own money for?
Well, which aircraft do you have?
I have the 21.9 TRX. So
Nice.
22. So 2022. So I absolutely love that thing. Um, I saw it down in I think Milwaukee. The winter of 20 would be the 2021 boat show, I think, and I got in it, and Robert Kloss was down there showing it off and stuff, and I just fell in love with that thing, and I had to have one. And I left the show, and my wife looked at me and she goes, "We're gonna have a Yarcraft someday, aren't we?" I said, "I'm guessing we are, because it's just a fabulous, fabulous boat."
It is, man. It's cool. And I've owned a lot of different boats. I mean, I started in a 1980 something smoker craft
Hmm.
with a I don't with an even older what was it, a Johnson 25 tiller, Humminbird electronics that had pixels this big, so a weed looked the same as a fish, but at least I could tell bottom or when I was in the weed bed.
Right?
And that was all I needed to kind of really get my get my fix for being on the water, because before I had a boat, I had to wait till ice fishing season so I could venture to the offshore structure that I wanted to get to but didn't have access to. And so that was a time when I could go out there, and I just got totally obsessed with ice fishing because of that, watching the old in fisherman videos with, Doug
Hmm.
Stange and all those guys doing some pretty cool stuff through the ice. And the Vex, then I ended up getting a Vexlar eventually and started being able to interact with fish in real time, and it was the coolest thing ever. And here we are 20 years later, and
Right?
everybody's up in arms because we're interacting with fish in real time, open water now, even
Yep.
though we've been doing it for 2 decades. But whatever, it's that was the start. And then once I got that, after that smoker craft, I actually jumped into a Lund, and then which was an awesome trolling boat in getting out into bigger water, and I got to run like the guys did on TV, and be cool and everything. And then I got into fiberglass boats, and here we are now. Yeah, I'm running Yarcraft since 2012, and they're an amazing machine. I mean, a lot of great boats out there, but there's something special about those hulls and the way they can work through chop. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, it's pretty. It's pretty. It's sometimes it's just the drive that makes me happy, and the way in or the way out. It just like I went out last night after work, and there's a little bit of chop on Bago, nothing crazy, but just how it felt. Just ran out to a couple of rock piles, quick for a quick fish, and it just was so. The moon was up, coming over the east side of the lake, and running out in the lake. Oh, it was the greatest feeling ever. I was like, I gotta keep doing this more often.
Yes. Well, if fishing sucks, at least you got a good riding boat.
Right? Yeah, no matter what. So that first boat you got, what did you do to it to make it your own?
Uh, Outfitted it with rod holders because at that time I was exploring Lake Koshkonong, trying to learn
Oh,
how to troll. And the cool thing about Koshkonong, you've got a 5 foot water column. So as long as your bait's not totally digging bottom, every bait is in the right spot always.
right?
And I was actually one of my best. It was it was before even planer. I started fishing with planer boards. It was just flatlining in the prop wash with
Okay.
shad wraps, shallow shad wraps, and then you'd see a rod buckle over. It didn't matter if it was a catfish or a pike or whatever. It was just so awesome to just see that whole sequence happen. And then eventually I got planer boards and learned how to put a spread out. And then I'd find myself in school drawing, you know, really detailed charts and graphs of trolling spreads once, because that developed into salmon, and salmon have really specialized spreads, not to just appeal to a fish as an individual lure, but you learn how to manipulate your spread to draw fish into a spread and work them into, biting
Yep.
something there. But then, but that was so intriguing to me, being able to dive into the variables throughout a trolling spread, and by changing something over here or over here, a half a step could mean the difference, in having a really successful day or not. And I just love that process of elimination, um, from the dynamic of trolling. That's what made that so appealing to me. But during the smoker craft days, that didn't stop me from going into a weed bed and dipping weed pockets with a bobber or something like that to fish for walleyes. That I did everything, but I was really fascinated by trolling. It was so cool.
That's something. Isn't it funny how things kind of spin back around? And now, I mean, how much do you troll now, other than if you take the river work out of it, but like how much do you think you actually do you troll quite a bit anymore or not really?
I'll troll a little bit in the rivers, especially if I have Jamie with me. We like to just stroll lures around and stuff, but I don't I don't think I trolled this year. I'm not sure if I did. And there was times I probably could have, to catch fish, but every hour that I get to invest on the water, I'm just trying to work through things to get better at where it's going. So.
Yeah, I feel like everybody's kind of stuck in this weird world of not a weird world, but like everybody's trying to catch up on live scope and people are trying to get better or forward facing sonar. People are trying to get better at that. And I kind of feel like some like trolling's getting kind of left behind a little bit. I kind of hope there's some way that the trollers can figure out how to level the playing field to come back up because I miss being on the troll.
And you still can do it. And there's times when it's from a fish per hour perspective,
Yep.
you're way better.
For
It's
sure.
just at day's end, what's in your bag is what counts. And but someday technology there'll be another advancement,
Hmm.
and it could be next year for all we know, that will allow a trolling spread, especially for pelagic, times or fish species. There'll be a time when it all comes full circle and trolling will probably resume itself as a threat, during certain
Right.
situations.
I suppose, yeah. Everything kind of comes around, doesn't it?
There's no doubt in my mind that down the road, what you'll be able to have a live view and interact with fish in your trolling spread, and instead of just having one rod, you're tweaking things throughout your entire
Right.
spread to multiply your efficiency by six or whatever. And if you're in the right grade of fish, you're gonna outfish the guys that are just trying to bunk
That's
one
true.
fish at a time ahead.
That's true. Could you imagine if you could let line out as the board's out? Like from the clasp from a trolling board, if you could allow yourself to let line and take line in and out from that board, that'd be crazy.
I've I've played with it with yeah, it's not yeah, that could be a real thing.
Right? That'd be
So,
cool. Yeah,
yeah.
I just feel like, and maybe it's just because the way these things are going, that when people kind of get in one direction, they kind of focus on that, and then somebody gets left behind. But then those people start kind of re bringing new products into their side of the industry, and hopefully it all comes back around.
There's no doubt in my mind that like I have walls of flicker minnows and flicker shads right now that have more dust on it than my shelves around here do, and that's a lot.
Right?
And someday we'll have to wipe the dust off and get them back into the rotation. But for right now, I'm really having a good time, engaging with fish and doing what we're doing now, and just trying to learn more with the eyes underwater that we have available.
So when you first had that smoker craft, were you always a technology person? Like once you had it, you had to learn it and figure it, or was it kind of like a side thing that this is a tool, not my main tool, or was it kind of like a focus for you right off the start?
I I love to set my mind on not master. I'm not. No one's. Well, some people have mastered certain things, but I always just wanted to get as good as possible as I felt like there was a ceiling when you grasp enough to be really effective at something. And the smoker craft served just as a bridge to get from shore to fun stuff.
Right?
And whether it was a weed edge or a rock hump that you just can't access from shore. And then as once I got into that Lund, um, that had more features. It was a bigger hull. It could venture around more and troll more effectively than I could out of my smoker craft. And that's when I started to get. I just love getting very technical with every aspect of things because you can't control fish, but if you can control your own workflow and everything that goes into it to the best of your ability, then you're going to do better. And that's just I just love hyper consuming information for whatever I have my eyes set on, basically.
Are you a note taker? Do you take notes and like log your daily stuff, or
I
you?
used to, yeah, but I got I used to do daily logs. Those are all still back there, and I was trying to develop patterns through that. And then over the last, well, since 2021, I've learned that a lot of the stuff that I was gathering from there just proved wrong. All that allowed me to do is make better educated guesses to hopefully play out the way that you
Mm.
intend. And then now I'm just learning that I've learned since 2021 that there's so much I don't know, and not all fit. A pattern doesn't mean the same thing anymore because every fish is in a different mood or doing something different at that very moment in time, and just trying to apply educated guesses to fish that are just being themselves is hasn't worked out. So now you just learn that you just go find fish. It's fall now, and you expect certain things to happen, and then once the thermocline dissolves, you have guesses on where you're going to see stuff, but then then you're looking around, you're like, oh, you're not supposed to be there, or but I guess I'll fish for you since you're here, and so just throw it out the window and just go look for them.
Right. It kind of sometimes I think we get, at least I do, get stuck in memory sometime, and it can be detrimental to my day.
Oh
Instead of
yeah,
instead of just going out there like you just said, just find the fish and fish where they're at.
that's right, and that's been really enjoyable to do because of it, and because there was a there's a once you're 20 years in, the learning curve doesn't look like this anymore, and it's you're still learning, but it's the taper is there, and it's not that it's getting boring. You just are confident in
Yep.
what you've established over 20 or 2 decades of putting patterns together to make the best educated guess you can. But now you get to be in the moment more, and whatever is in front of you acting however it's acting, you get to address it in that moment, so you feel more in tune a lot of times now, with the feedback you're getting, so
That makes sense.
it's neat. It's been super enjoyable.
Do you
Not as
think
fun for Oh, go ahead.
do you think that is that do you think that way that we do that kind of is coming around with the live sonar, or is it just because of the amount of people?
No, it's because of the
Live sonar.
live sonar and the information that it puts, forward to you in real time. That's been it. I mean, you can generate those same guesses using your other sonar or whatever, but there's not that's really been a defining change in how I approach a day on the water. And over the last 3 years, I'd say my catch rate has gone down day to day,
Hmm.
but the interactions are more meaningful and teaching you more, so you don't even have to have it's a nice offset. You're still learning more, you're taking more information in, you're not always as successful, numbers wise, but you get to have a really good grasp of what's going on.
So what's the first thing you look for when you encounter a fish? Like if they're are their reaction or where they're set up in the water column, or is there a certain thing that's your first indicator?
It depends on where you come across them. Every system has very obvious dinner tables where active fish will set up to momentarily take advantage of of feeding on there. And then you've got roamers or just basin dwellers, and they may or may not be around bait, and they're acting different. Or if you catch fish in the act where they're actively pursuing a school of fish, or they're set up on a little corner of some weeds, and that they're just sticking their head out there waiting. You just know, are they primed, are they not primed, are they just swimming, or coming up this fall. There'll be times where I don't see anything, but then I turn my headlight on and I look down and I'm surrounded by glowing eyeballs because there's just a bunch of these motionless logs down there that don't care that you're there, and they're not hungry. And so yeah, you try to hedge your bet on the coming across the right fish at the right time by being somewhere near some of those dinner tables, so that there's a fish actually in the act of looking to eat something at that time. instead of just trying to trick a negative or neutral fish into reacting to you, which still can be done,
Hmm.
but the layups are still to go to where they go to eat and then take advantage of those areas.
Was there a catch that using live sonar? Was there a catch that you remember that kind of was the aha moment for you? Like, oh, okay, this all kind of comes together for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I was practicing for the head to head on Mille Lacs, and that was like the fifth day I ever had it. And I was, I pulled off of a sand break, got out into some mud, saw a bunch of candlesticks out there, and I'm like, I, I think those look like big fish, so I threw a jerk bait out in the middle of the lake and got it down 7, 8 feet, and the whole school started following it, and then one stupid one ate it, and I never would I but have been able to target that school or that fish with a a jerkbait that can
Hmm.
barely get 10 feet down in the middle of Mille Lacs. The first time I'm ever on that lake, I wouldn't even have wasted my time unless I was trolling and hoping to collide with that same
Yep.
life. But once that happened, it was just, yeah, the doors were open and the light bulbs were going off, and I dug, you start digging through all sorts of different presentations to try to capitalize on those fish, and by the end of that week I was so hyper focused on wanting to just learn more about that it was all over from there. So
Did you go into like a recluse state where you just went and fished every single day, staring at the live scope after that? Everybody
a
talks
lot of
about
days I didn't
everybody.
even pick up. Yeah, a lot of days I didn't even pick up a rod. I just would go through milk runs that I was comfortable on, and around the lakes around here, and just observe and just look. And then it's too tempting if you see something, you had to pick up something just to confirm that what you were looking at was what you were interpreting, or what you were interpreting was actually what was really there. So I didn't just sit all day without it. But when people ask me, stairs how to stair step their way into getting better at it, I say just quit with the temptation to cast at everything for a second, and just go look and develop start to develop mechanics with your eyes and how your foot just to start to build the process, but
Hmm.
don't put so much emphasis on the fishing part. And then once stuff starting to make sense to your eyes, then fishing for everything that you see, just so that you can confirm what you're seeing is what's really happening, and then that just solidifies everything. And before you know it, you're off to the races. And that was before there was even much information out on YouTube or anything. And now you can go get the master classes online
Right.
if you want to accelerate your learning curve. But the learning curve is what makes it fun for me. I'm glad I didn't have an opportunity to watch a lot of stuff or learn a lot from other people. I loved the process of going through it myself.
That's
That's more enjoyable.
That's what I think. So it's as well. I mean, it's almost like people like it's like a Rogers ayahuasca retreat. You kind of just you go into like a 2 week window where you're just staring at the screen. You're fishing, not fishing. It's all you're doing. Everything else. There's no other poles in your hand, and it was an experience for me too. I mean, I don't fish as many tournaments as you do, but I still do quite a few. But just to kind of disappear for a couple weeks and just stare at the screen and trying to figure out what's what, how it works is it's rather fascinating. Actually, kind of helps more about just fishing in general. People think that it's gonna help you catch more fish, but things you learn watching that screen help you with other things too as well. If you're going to troll or do something else, you can still use what you're learning that for the future use, for your future
You
use.
sure can. It's really amazing on those interactions. You can see what gets fish to just make that final commitment, or you can see what turns fish off, and then like you said, you could even apply that to your trolling. So I bet you're playing with turns and speed changes a lot more as you're trolling
Right?
nowadays than you were before,
Yeah.
because you don't realize how many fish just follow you and then don't care about you anymore.
Yeah,
But
that's
it's
that's
from
crazy.
the tournament. Oh, go ahead.
And I saw you do a couple years ago an aim, and you were pulling, I don't know what you're pulling, bottom bouncers or flies, and you had your live scope back, and you're watching. I don't know how you did everything, to be honest, because you had two pulls out the sides. You were doing You're doing flies in one, and you had, I think, like a three-way down, and you were watching all that action on your live scope, and you're driving. I was like, I don't know how he's doing all that without crashing, because there was about 30 boats there. I'm like, that's a skill in itself. But watching when you're doing things like that is crazy awesome to watch them come up and, I always thought they come up, they're going to hit it or they're going to sniff it and leave, not just follow it.
I know, and they'll follow for so long. It's crazy. And if you do just the wrong thing, then they're gone. So then sometimes you're just hanging on for dear life, just please just finish the deal here. I can't stand staring at you no more. But it was pretty cool. And I think you're seeing a lot of new faces in the tournament game. I think it's been a great thing for the tournament scene because prior to that, there was a bear like kind of a barrier to entry in tournament fishing because it was a matter of who had the best network of people
Yep.
to accelerate your finding of the right patterns when you get to an area. Local knowledge is huge.
Mm-hmm.
Knowledge of the dinner tables, I guess at that particular lake was huge, just to give you a better understanding. And now, even without that, this has been such a great equalizer. It's been great to see people just with no fear go to a brand new body of water, dissect it with their own brain and their own eyes, interpret things for themselves, and find stuff that even the locals had no idea was there. So as much as complaining as you hear online about it, I think for someone that wants to get into the competitive side of fishing, this transition in technology has allowed people to compete at any level better without any knowledge and do it really well. So it's been cool to see.
Yeah, it is a great equalizer, and it's still really hard to do. And people kind of think that it's pretty simple. Go out there and you see a fish catch a fish, and it's really not like that. But I kind of get where they're seeing it because those people only see the highlight reels. They don't see the days and days that go into figuring this out. And like even the cadences, growing up fishing river, fishing the Bago system, I only had a couple cadences when I was jigging, and now it's like a Rolodex of A through F and DC and B plus A. There's so many different ways that you do stuff now. It's crazy.
Yes. At some point, once people reach a level of comfort with all this technology, I think it'll just allow them. They don't even have to spend as much time online trying to learn because they realize none of that a lot of time talk. When you're listening to a piece of advice, it's all out the window. Just
Yep.
just go find them and figure out what makes
Right.
them what makes them bite. Yeah, and have fun with it. Learn. And that's what I think. But everyone's different.
So tell me about your guide life. How was that? So you were doing most down the lakes. Were you guiding every kind of species, or kind of what were you doing down there?
Mostly panfish and smallmouth bass, honestly. Most of my guiding season was from May to September. A lot of it was when kids were out of school, and those were my most enjoyable customers were parents that didn't get outdoors much with their kids, but appreciated spending time with their kids. So then they put their trust in you to kind of lead the kid throughout the day to having a good experience. And those were the most enjoyable by far. Several weekly, people would demand walleye trips, but then by 10 o'clock in the morning and only a couple fish in the boat, a pack of smallmouths that are bending your rod over is just fine, or a cooler full of bluegills to take home for a fish fry ended up being the right thing for the day. And so, yeah, panfish and smallmouths, I made a living off them for many years. But not a very good living, up here in Wisconsin, you're short season. If you're
Yep.
in Florida and you can guide 12 months a year, that's one thing. And I didn't guide through the ice. I just did open water, and it's hard to support a family on a short open water window being a fishing guide. And I learned that, but it was good supplemental income to help with the other stuff that I was building at the time, behind the computer, and it allowed me to stay on the water and stay on top of things, and stay in a good flow in my boat. If you step out of your boat and come back 2 weeks later, you got ring rust and stuff's, you don't remember the flow all the way
Yep.
through. You're just not a well-oiled machine, and being able to be out every day or as many days as possible during the week really keeps things sharp.
So you didn't guide ice. Did it just not? I know it's not as lot. It's not long enough ice season down there, or just something you just didn't want to do.
Uh, I just ended up not doing it. I worked at a bait shop down here, DNS Bait and Tackle,
Oh,
who for several years did their own operation on the ice and had shack rentals and stuff like that. And I'd stay back at the shop and just run people through the store. And then there was a series of guides that were out there, you know, jerking perch all winter long. Never did it through the ice. I honestly don't know why, but it was also a time when you know you were that there's a lot of promotional work that used to have to be, you
oh,
know, trade shows,
yep.
sports shows, all that stuff. It just turned into a more of a traveling season to get things done that you couldn't get done during the open water.
So what was the? Do you remember the first tournament you got into?
Yeah, I was on Beaver Dam Lake. I think it was a World Walleye Association tournament. I think it was trolling trolling shallow shad raps 30 feet back behind a board. We caught a 24-inch walleye. That was the only fish we caught that day. But I was so pumped and it was still one of the bigger walleyes I had seen at that point, you know, in my life. So when I saw a 24-inch walleye hit the bottom of the boat during a tournament, you know, when you're super pumped up to even be there, I still remember bringing that fish up in the red basket, super proud. I don't even, I think it wasn't enough to win, but it was a tough bite. So I think it was a top five that we had. But that was the very first tournament experience I had. And then started doing several years with my dad in the Masters Walleye circuit
Hmm.
because I was just totally hooked. And dad didn't, you know, wasn't a hardcore fisherman like me, but he was my dad, and he loved to, you know, that was a way that we could spend time together in the boat, and it allowed me to learn things along the way at my own way instead of you know, having two cooks in the kitchen. I
I
just got to be
gotcha.
the only cook and make all the mistakes and all the right choices and start to figure out the way to do things. So.
So do you ever have any rough moments with dad in the boat where you kind of butt heads, or did he kind of just let you do what you're doing and he was along for the ride?
No, I was very lucky. Dad, he's kind of a saint. Because there was many moments I was probably acting um, pretty stupidly in the boat, whether it was frustration from a simple mistake or me. Yeah, I mean, I was probably a prick at a lot of moments, and I have if he would have shoved me over the side of the boat and said, you know, catch you at weigh-in, I wouldn't have blamed him all these years later. And I called him this year coming back from a tournament. I fished with a good buddy of mine, and we had some moments in the boat. They were fun, but it made me relive some moments in the boat that I had with Dad. And I said, Dad, thank you for being, you know, so patient with me in the boat all those years. And he said, Hey, no problem. You know, it's not a big deal, but it's a big deal to me. So he was the perfect partner.
That's awesome. That's awesome, yeah. So what made you do that first tournament? And why Beaver Dam? Have you ever fished there before?
Just a buddy of mine back then said, Hey, there's a walleye tournament. You want to fish it? And I was just like, Sure. So I jumped in his boat, and that's what we did. I think it was a chartreuse and pearl shallow shad rep #7. That was the first tournament walleye I ever caught.
Wow.
But yes, that was a lot of fun, and I just had the bug. I had the bug before then. I had Walleye. I was a subscriber to Walleye Insider back then. I couldn't wait to read the next bit. I couldn't wait to watch the next thing on TV and watch Sam Anderson and all these other guys that I might go front and all those other guys, you know, compete. And I just wanted to be there so
Yeah.
bad that I even, you know, the minute I got a deal and got to put stickers on my truck, I was like, oh my God, I'm starting to become one of that. You know, maybe they'll look at me and think that I'm, you know, at their level, you know, at their level
Yep.
someday or aspiring to be or whatever. I felt like I was in the club and then, but then that was a lot of fun. Then we just kind of took a step back Um, I just simply love to go fishing and compete. So
So
it was,
it was the competition, or it was trying to outfish other people? That was what got you.
no, it's the competition is fun because it puts a lot of pressure. I love the pressure, and I love the butterflies of feeling like you don't have what it takes, but then seeing it come together and then realizing that you did. But what I love most is just having a goal set in front of you that you get to really have an excuse to hyper focus on,
Hmm.
and try to pursue that. That's more I enjoy like the preparation time prior to a tournament is probably as much or more enjoyable to me than the actual tournament. Just, visualizing how the week might go or what might happen and organizing your boat and your tackle and all the variations on the patterns that you hope work or whatever. Like that's like a meditation to me, and everything about the leading up to the tournament is almost more fulfilling than by the time you actually get there.
So, what kind of boat guy are you? Are you a put everything away right away? Are you a mess guy, or how's the yard craft look when you're out there in tournament day?
It depends. It depends. There's some days of it looks like a bloody bomb went off in the boat, and then there's other days where you wouldn't know I even made a cast a line. So usually it's a mix, kind of halfway in between. So,
It's
but
funny to me, some people that just come back in, and every time it's just a disaster. I'm like, I don't know how you guys fish with all this stuff laying everywhere.
yeah, and efficiency is so key, and that's part of the fun of the preparation part is during those meditations in the boat, you everything is so meticulously put everywhere, and you're memorizing where everything was in case of this, in case of this, in case of this, so you don't even waste 3 seconds opening the wrong compartment, and you know what steps to go through in your boat to do it, and you're just trying to implant all those scenarios in your mind so that when it actually unfolds on game day, you're on it, right now, and you don't waste any time. I do like that.
It is I mean, those are some of the best times the night before when it's just getting dark and you're sitting in the boat, kind of doing your last tie ups, doing your whatever, glue ups, whatever you're doing. It is the calm before the storm, they would say. So do you
Yeah.
get so when you're launching, or when it's go time and your numbers up and you're driving past the dock, what's that feeling like for you?
It used to be a bigger feeling in my gut, going out because I had a lot to prove to myself, and I felt like I had a lot to prove to other people, and I wanted to make my parents proud and all that stuff. And at the end of the day, or nowadays it's still exciting, but it's a lot of it is just emotion that you're going through. Um, but but there's your brain's still rolling at 150 miles an hour for sure. It's just moved on to other things, the more important things. I remember the very first pro-am year that I fished. It was FLW, and I made the top 10 cut for the championship in Bismarck. And I was so overwhelmed by, they give you a new truck and a new boat to use to take to the river that day. So like everything, and you're surrounded by John Gilman and Tommy Scarless and all the big names that made the top 10 cut. And it was almost overwhelming. Like, I don't belong here with these guys. And that I remember feeling about this big for that tournament, and it's just gotten easier since then. But that was a good kick in the stomach to get my head out of the clouds.
Was there a moment that you realized that you're good enough to be here? That this is what I'm no different than the guys next to me. I'm no different than the guys at the ramp. Was there a moment that, or are you still looking for that? Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that I love the last 3 years have been a lot of fun because, like I said, the learning curve not didn't quite completely plateau, but there's only so many things you can really keep ramping up to learn more and more. In the last 3 years, I've realized how little I know about so many things, and it's
Right.
been a cool experience to go through again, just like
Right.
when we started fishing.
That's true. What does a zero mean to you? I don't know the last time you had one, but what's a zero mean to you?
It used I went I went almost my entire tournament fishing stretch without them. In the last few years, I've got some, just because it's when you're if you're not in contention to qualify for a championship, or if you're just jackpotting a tournament, or what you eventually you realize that you're only going to make money in the top three spots of a tournament anyways. And so you can either and I had no problem, hoping for a big bag and coming in with zero. The first one was hard to swallow, but after that, it's easy. I don't care anymore. If I have something that potentially could win, and there's also a potential of coming in with a zero, I'll still do it. So
That's fair. Yeah, yeah, it can be. I think the first one's pretty devastating, but I think everybody needs that. Everybody needs a zero in their life to kind of understand things a little better.
it's more than just fishing.
Yeah.
Yes, you need to take some zeros in life and in fishing, and it applies
Mhm.
to both for
Yeah,
sure.
it definitely helped me in the boat better, like manage you know, myself. Sometimes I think we see some people that are, they get really amped on the board and some positive or negative, and then but everybody has their own way they do things, and I think a zero helps you kind of figure out what kind of person you are in that boat.
If you can handle it or not, you mean?
Yeah, yeah. If you can handle it and how you not necessarily treat everybody else in the boat, but how you react to it. If you're gonna freak out or be upset about missing things, or you kind of need to kind of that almost get to that Zen layer until you can't really. I think you can't really be a good fisherman until you kind of get to that where you understand yourself in the boat and how you're acting, and that kind of like you said kind of goes into like hyper focus into fishing and not getting lost in all the other stuff that's going on. Like I the stories of the guys that get, I think a couple years ago when Owen tore his motor off in Oshkosh, and the fact that he kept fishing. I mean, I know it had to be a hell of a rough day for him, but he kept fishing and he didn't go very far, but he caught his 5 fish, and I'm like, dude, that had to take a lot, a lot of mental strength not to just turn back in and go back in and figure something out instead of just, I'm going to make this work. Thank God there's, a lot of good places to fish right in front of that landing. But yeah, the fact that he did that just blew my mind. Like, man, this kid has already got shit together that he's able to figure out, his brain, figure his brain out to be able to keep fishing like that after something so catastrophic happens.
Yep. No, for sure. I that You got to be able to take your lumps, because there's more lumps than good days. And I can't tell you how many zeros I've had in the last 3 years, even just going out fun fishing, just exploring different things, and then knowing that you could go catch fish, but just accepting that if you can just push through what you're trying and tweak a couple things and make it work, maybe you'll have a better day, and then you end up with zero, just a no fish day. Can't create any content with what just happened because it was a totally worthless day, but you got more up here now to help you out down the road. And I got no problem having fishless days as long as I'm taking something away from it.
Right, I hear that. I mean, you're making the YouTube videos so longer. I'm a TikTok guy, so all I have to do is make 9 seconds, and if I can't make 9 seconds work in a day, I was like, oh my god, dude, what were you doing today?
That's awesome. I That would almost be easier to do. Just a hook set and a fish reel in, and you're locked in.
Yeah, that's it. Or a release, you're done, right? Life's good, and a good sunset every now and then, and the ride's out. But
Yeah.
and then I'm sitting in the home of fixed TV. You had you did the H2H. How was that? How did you like that? How that tournaments, how they set up, all that kind of fun stuff.
That was the funnest um, year of tournament fishing I've had in my entire life. It was awesome, and luckily enough, I had a pretty much every tournament I was doing okay in, and at fir- Yeah, what I some things that I loved about it was the no information, limited practice, fish by the seat of your pants for 4 or 5 days or whatever it was, and with a small field so that you know as you fly by the seat of your pants, you can just run stuff, and it was new bodies of water that I'd never like. There was so much good happening, and the coverage was great. If
Hmm.
a good during that year, I literally had companies writing me handwritten notes, wanting to pursue partnerships, into the next year and stuff because they liked the coverage and they got to see us, actually fish for more than just 16 seconds on a YouTube video. And it was, and I really enjoyed fishing alone. I like fishing partner tournaments. I don't mind co-angler pro-am tournaments. I don't mind any of that. But when it's just you in the boat and your own flow, and it's just you against just me, and nobody else, and you're in your own little tunnel, like that was serious. I haven't had that much fun in all my tournament fishing years. So that was a cool year.
Yeah, and looking back, and I don't know, down the road they're gonna look back, and hopefully this continues. They continue on, and they have a lot of success. But the year you guys had, and the group that you guys had, was the the difference between all you guys and the characters and the plot lines and like that was amazing for us desk guys that sat at a desk and watch you guys fish all afternoon. It was amazing. Just all the different people, all the different backgrounds, being able to listen to you guys talk all day long is kind of where this came out of. Is I just love listening to you guys talk about random things and ask random questions about your past and kind of like the outside of the fishing world, the edges of fishing talk. And that was just, I feel like in, 20 years, we're going to look back and there'll be, a big fishing show that's on every week. And we're going to look back. Remember that back when H2H started and they had Joe Okada and Max Wilson and all those guys? It was just a phenomenal, it's almost like it was a lightning in a bottle for that year.
Yeah, that was cool. Even no matter where I go, if I'm in a group of fishermen, someone will bring up, oh, sure miss watching you in my office, on during weekdays fishing. That was fun. We're 3 years, was it 3 years ago,
Yeah.
and they're still talking about it. So yeah, that was a good little run.
Yeah.
But I would love to see a format like that come back because flying by the seat of your pants, one-on-one competition is where my brain works the best for sure, and I proved that to myself that year. So
Right. I would love that. I always in the halls here, I always try to get them to do stuff. And I'm like, it'd be awesome. It's like one of those bass shows down south where there's going to be three lakes. We're not really sure where we're going to take you to. You might end up in Green Lake or Beaver Dam or Green Bay or Oshkosh. Or just show up at this park and ride and follow us. That would be so awesome.
yeah, just dump your boats in and go. Let's
Yeah.
go.
Uh,
It's fun to spend a week practicing and trying to really fine tune patterns and really dial in every nook and cranny so that everything is. But if you can visit not frequently visited bodies of water and it's fresh to everybody, which is a hard thing to do year after year, but just for
yep.
whatever. But to have that come together and then to see who can unfold things in their brain under those conditions, for days on end. That I think that demonstrates something that can't be demonstrated with a lot of preparation, water time preparation. So
So you also fish the AIM series. What's your favorite weight, a live weight or catch, pitch, release? What do you like about both of them? What do you not like about them? What's your favorite?
catch photo release is the easiest and funnest method to do it. At the end of the day, I can look back on my scorecard and just pick the five biggest ones that I caught, and I'm, rewarded for those catches. And in a tournament now with so many regulations and slot limits and no call and party,
Yeah.
whatever the excuse is for changing tournament fishing limits, that that makes a huge impact on showcasing who actually was the best fisherman that day. And everyone in the I know everyone says, well, we all got to play by the same rules, or it's all about decisions. That's that's crap. It is. You know, I want to go catch. I want to bring in my five biggest ones, and I don't want that particular state law to interject on my success that day just because of the rules that they have set, and then I get beat by somebody that didn't fish as good as me that day.
Right.
I don't like that. And I mean, the strategies are fun and trying to find just the right under. So it's all great, but I don't think it's a true showcase of what catch photo release can do. And I know there's technology will make that aspect of tournament fishing better. I bet you in the not too distant
Yeah.
future, where all that's eliminated and truly the best fisherman each day is rewarded for their success.
Yeah, I do love the catch photo and release. I think sometimes when you get into and I guess I've been kind of fortunate sometimes in a couple tournaments that you get into live weights and got a lucky catch. It wasn't on much, got a lucky catch, and all of a sudden, boom, I'm in a spot where I really shouldn't be in, because I stumbled into something. I wasn't really on much of anything. I was having a rough day, right? Where if you're in the AIM series and you can go spring or wherever you're at, and you're catching one or two, okay, that's cool. But if you're banging out multiple fish over and over again, that card's loaded. That shows you that when Denny announces that they had 10 fish in the card all over 25, you're like, okay, yeah, that guy should probably be the champion today.
Yeah, exactly. And they
Right.
should for good reason. They found the best class of fish. I've had to run 100 and almost 130 miles one way to go find 19 and a half inchers that weighed a half pound more than the 19 and a half inchers that were
Oh,
close by, and instead of just looking for the biggest
yep.
actual fish you possibly can. I mean, I've still done really well in tournaments with no call or slot limits or whatever rules they have. I've got no problem playing on those fields, but anybody that says it's just an added thing that adds cool strategy and decision making, that I don't buy it. It's just not as fun as going fishing and trying to catch five good ones. So.
Yeah. And so I also want to ask you about, you fished, I thought was one of the coolest fishing tournaments or series, and I want to get into, just didn't have the time. But AIM River Series, you were on that this last year. How was that? I grew up fishing. I grew up about 100 yards away from the Fox River, and my whole life was river fisherman. And I saw that come on the Mississippi River, and I was trying to find a partner, and we couldn't make the times work. But you fished it. How was it? And was it as awesome as it looked?
Well, it's a lot of fun. I will be honest that I'm disappointed in participation in that division.
Yeah, that was
Uh,
tough.
there's so many good river fishermen up and down that valley. The the entry fee, it's a working man's entry fee. It's a weekend commitment. You can practice a couple days ahead if you want, but so many of these river rats are so good.
Yep.
They've known about a magic rock or current break since before I was in diapers. There's no reason they couldn't just jump out there and go through a milk run on the tournament, given the current river levels, and know that they're gonna do just fine. And if they don't, they're not out thousands and thousands of dollars. It's the AIM Weekend Walleye Series.
Yep.
So number one, I want to say I'm disappointed in the participation. I hope more people play out there because that river is a gem and it's
Yep.
so fun to learn. I lack. I mean, I'm getting more and more experience on it, and I have awesome mentors that have really helped me understand current flow and using your eyes to spell out spots. I mean, it's amazing once you start seeing it. It's like a topographical map is being drawn on the surface for you, and it's rewarding then to be able to cast to that stuff and approach it the right way and get bit. It's really gratifying. And if you and there is such a super good group of guys. Like everybody, I get along with everybody that's fishing that series, and I really hope that more people take the time to run over to the Mississippi Valley next year and compete in that division because it needs more boats, it needs more participation. There and it they go from the pools in Illinois all the way up to where it starts in St. Paul. It's It's all really good water, but man, has it been fun to learn that river. It's really cool.
What's your favorite part of it? Or favorite part of that river of river fishing?
Um, when you think you see the cast, when you think you see your cast being spelled out to you, and you cast a piece of plastic on a jig head out there, and you're envisioning it come through there, and there's one tucked in there, and then you get to feel and whack it. And I wasn't staring at a screen in the
Yeah.
middle of the lake. I just used into my eyes and intuition and knowledge of how to set up a cast on it, and it all came together. And you get to that thunk that when they just inhale it, that is the most gratifying feeling that you'll experience in walleye fishing. And I love that more than anything, you know.
Right. Yeah, there's the just being able to break down the river with, like you said, with your eyes. And just I went up to somewhat preparing for NWT in La Crosse. I went 2 or 3 weeks ago. I went out there, and just looking at things was the I mean, I was just in awe of things. The first time I ever went back waters, I went back there just staring at stuff, and it just is like all these different pockets and holes, and you're 1 foot here and it's 30 feet there, and you're like, it was just mind blowing. I really didn't know at some points I didn't know what to do. I just stood there just staring at them. Like it's just gorgeous.
It is, and the fish are everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing, and they don't all show. You can be around a lot of fish, and even if I'm sweeping with active target, you don't see everything. There's been so many times I've watched my a willow cat rig lay down on the bottom, and I know that I'm seeing stuff right on bottom because I can see my willow cat floating there, and all of a sudden, here comes this shark approaching it from behind. If you can line everything up right in the current, and you're like, where did you come from?
Right.
Which rock did you just pull out from underneath? Because I didn't see you, but you're a good one, and that it's those fish have lots of nooks and crannies to hide in, and it's almost overwhelming at times because there's so many nooks and crannies. But it's man, is that fun to explore. But if I lived closer, I would definitely invest more time in looking around
Right.
for more secondary sneaky spots because usually I go out there with just enough time to hit obvious stuff, and so does a lot of other people do too. But man, imagine if you could just be a complete river rat out there and
Right.
find some of the hidden goods,
Yeah, we spent the day just back off the main channel, and at one point I think we had to be like a half mile off the channel, and I'm like, I don't even know where we're at, and if I didn't have GPS, we have to get a helicopter to get us out of here. We had to get out of the boat and push a couple times, but then we found fish, and I'm like, I don't. This is the coolest place ever. It's the coolest place
Yeah,
ever.
man.
But just so much of it. There's so much to explore, so much to do. I was about back there and go, I like to come here with the flat bottom duck boat and just go crazy back here.
That's what you do. That's exactly how you attack it.
Right.
Um, I mean, I used to have a little 17-foot skiff with a 25 horse on it, and it's fun with that because you run around with no fear. And and if you can run through stuff with no fear, you'll find yourself in holes that you didn't know existed, and they have fish in them. It's just really cool.
Yeah. So, break down a wing dam. How do you come up? What do you, when you see a wing dam, what are you looking for?
Well, um,
Are you looking for depth? Are you looking for how the current's hitting? Are you looking for the breaks in the wing dams, or are you kind of
yeah,
just
usually wing dams are in sets. So you've got multiple wing dams in a row, and depending on how much flow you have in the river, it's going to dictate how far from the initial dam that life is going to filter throughout that entire set, and set up on each one of those dams, and that's all determined by flow. So in low flow, those first couple wing dams are usually
oh,
really key, and if they can stretch out so they have easy access to the river channel to grab more fish passing by, you have yourself a constant treadmill of life circulating on that piece of rock. And to top it off, not all dams are created equal. Some come up higher than others. Some have had trees ram through them and blow holes in the dam. So now you actually have two pieces of structure with a funnel point in the middle. So it's creating multiple currents, either sweeping off the tip, or coming through that crack. But it's setting fish up differently, and having variations of or breaks in that dam make it juicier than others. And then other ones have really good rock laying out on the tip, um, that extends out into the channel, and those that usually holds some of the bigger bites. It doesn't always hold the biggest or the most fish that are setting up all up and down that dam, but some of the dinosaurs live out there on those tips that and they can be plucked off. So usually typically the first few dams in a series of dams are ones to start on, and but you never know. I mean, rock attracts fish,
Yep.
and rock attracts bait fish, and just because it's a slacker feeling dam, or just because it's not the obvious one, it doesn't mean that there might not be as much life on it. There could be less life, but they're still active. They're there to
Mhm.
eat on those dams.
Yep.
And so a lot of time, see, here I am saying a lot of times, you can usually find a fish or two on even some of the secondary or third dams that it would be in your top choice. And usually during a tournament, the stuff that you want a lot is not going to be available just when you want it, because everyone's hopscotching each other.
Yep.
And I'm okay with finding spots that have less life, but I know that I can touch them, you
Yep.
know,
Less life, less people.
less life, less people. But if it's good for a bite, it's good for a bite, and you move on to the next one, and just opens up your potential for a good day then.
What's your favorite structure to fish? It would be wing dams, sand humps, rock points, reeds.
Uh, Weeds with adjacent rock. That's I mean, around here in Madison, my entire milk run was pretty much comprised of good rock veins that extend into a weed bed. And there's nothing. I love fishing weeds. I really do. And if you've got a mixture of weed and rock together, that is such magic. That's probably my favorite.
That's cool. Is there
Cats. What's your favorite? What's the favorite weed for you to fish?
Oh, I would probably rocks. I love me a good wing dams are my favorite, but like on Winnebago the rocks, or if it's any river with a rock, it makes me happy. It just makes me happy that now with the being able to see stuff underwater, and when I go upon my milk run and you have this and this, and I find myself lately just floating down the river with forward facing sonar, just looking for rocks, just looking for like you said before. You said magic rock before a while ago, and I just started chuckling because that's literally kind of what I look for. It's just like there's it doesn't have to be very
And so do
big.
walleyes.
Yeah, it's like if you find a rock that's the size of a football in current, good chances you're gonna have something sitting behind that,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
it's only gonna be one, but still it's that finding that one spot and having those spots to go to hit spots here or there, the little I don't know, the little current seams, and no matter how far out they are, or if they're in close or whatever, that's kind of my thing is rocks. I never really fished a lot of weeds growing up. Because always was pretty much on a river. I mean, I grew up on a river, so there wasn't a lot of weeds it was always some kind of rock corners, or maybe some grass banks, things like that. But which kind of really came back when I was in Mississippi a couple weeks ago. The grass banks back there are just like, and they're just dug way out, way in there, and you're like looking at I think a couple times we were right on the grass, but yet you had another 4 feet of water underneath that grass that just dug way back in there, and you're like, God, if I could only find a way to get something back in there to them.
Yeah.
But we're drifting right next to the grass. I mean, you could jump out and jump on the bank, but there's still fish back in there. It's crazy.
That's pretty. But the first time I fished a weed bed, I went up to Lake Winnebago. My buddy had a house on
Oh,
Cowling
yep,
Bay.
yep.
So we motored out, and the coontail was really thick, and he gave me a slow poke with a pumpkin twister tail and then he had a slow poke with a worm, but we would just, it was dead flat calm, and you could just literally,
Drop it in.
dabble this in the pockets. And that was such a fun bite. Then I
Yeah.
took that down to Lake Kaganza where I live and did that in the weeds down there. And that's what opened my eyes to fishing the weeds. But it all started on that one little vacation on Winnebago.
That's cool. The reeds can be fun too, but they're kind of hit or miss, and there's a lot of, we're losing more and more reeds every year up here, so it's kind of tough, and they get hit a lot. So I think it's tough to really have a good day on there. Sometimes you're not there at the right time, but that can be a lot of fun flipping the reeds.
That is fun because then when you get a good one to whack it, it's
Yeah,
like you got what 8 feet of line out, and
you're right
it's so
there.
fun.
Even when the
Yeah.
catfish are in there, I was in there. I was going past kind of late spring, and I just kind of slowed down and I just went past and just scoped it. And I saw just a bunch of fish in the side scan. I'm like, I got nothing going on. It happened to be just a pile of catfish, but it was the funnest. I spent like 10 minutes there, caught a bunch, but it was so fun because they're in 2 feet of water, and I just flipped that in there, and once they hit the bottom, I was hooked up every time, and had a little fun there for a while, then moved on. But yeah,
That's
I
pretty.
think anytime do you have any of those days where you're just like out fishing and it may be sheephead or bass or whatever, you just come across and you go, you know what, I'm just going to sit and pound these things for a while.
Yeah, not so much anymore because I don't get as much free time as I used to go out and play. So when I do, I try to stay disciplined and make sure that I'm improving something about my fishing. But but even those interactions, confirming the species that you're
Yep.
targeting, it just going through those motions with that school of sheephead, just so that you've ingrained in your brain that what you saw and how they were postured and or positioned with each other or how you that's still all huge knowledge so that
Right.
you can build those filters to make you more efficient come tournament day. So there is that, and yes, I have had fun with them, but I just usually I say stay. I know it's a layup if I lob in there, but I'm just gonna keep going. That's more
So,
about where I'm at.
so what's a free day look like you? The kids out, the family out, kind of what you guys do when you're just not in tournament mode? Bluegills or bass or what you doing?
We've got a lake across the house that is loaded with 9 to 14 inch bass and bluegills, and we'll go out there and play around, or you can catch them right off the dock. It's pretty easy. Um, But yeah, there's not much free days. I get this time of year, which I like about fall fishing is you can be a nocturnal. As long as I'm willing to lose a night of sleep, I can still get a full day of fishing in. It's just after the sun goes down and the kids are asleep and
Right.
mom's watching over them. So actually, tonight might be a good night to do that. There's still a pile of fish in the weeds around me right now, and they get even stupider after dark. So
Right.
it should be fun.
So one thing I wanted to ask you about your boat in particular. So you put, I don't even know what they're called. You put basically reverse on your boat, trolling motor reverse on your pat.
Boat brakes, yeah.
Yeah.
Power
What
brakes they're called.
what is that? So they just break you or they reverse you?
It's both.
Both.
So they're pointed in reverse. They're 40-pound thrust trolling motors. So you got 80 pounds of thrust going the opposite direction. So as soon as it just allows me to scan at a faster clip without worrying about overshooting my target once I identify it. Because as soon as
Okay.
if I see something in front of me, I can hit these brakes and within well, depending on how fast you go, but just imagine another boat length or boat
Yep.
length and a half. You just by hitting a stomp switch, you can just stop. And after staring at your forward facing it long enough, you know that you really get to analyze the what's happening in front of you when the boats come to
Yep.
a stop. Well, that doesn't, sometimes that means having to come back around and go into the wind to
Yep.
use the wind as a constant brake or whatever. But if anyways, whatever you see, you can hit the brakes, you can stop on a dime to set up your cast. And once a fish is engaged with you, it even allows you to create more space to give that fish just a little bit more time to make the
Mm.
commitment if it wasn't already. So especially like the death jig from Walleye Nation's
Yep.
Creations, for example. That's a prime example. When I'm lobbing that at fish and they're not ready yet for the swing up to eat it, and they just need a little bit more room. You can just back off, keep it floating back at zero point 0.9 miles an hour. They're still engaged, but they're not right on the boat yet. There's a lot of cool things that you can do with it. And just boat positioning in general. I don't know if I'd want to fish a lake without them anymore. And as they become more powerful and feature rich, the uses will be endless with them. So
Is there a use for them on the river, or does the current kind of negate that?
it was cool up on pool two. The flow was low, so what I could do is I
Mm.
could turn the back end of the boat upriver, stay on the brakes, and then sweep the dam with my front trolling motor, and find out where I wanted to cast my crankbait to on top of the spine if you saw some crawlers up there.
Yep.
And then if you want to scoot over, you basically kick your bow over, jam it in reverse, scoot sideways along the dam, let the current realign your boat downriver again. You can sweep that part of the dam, and if nothing's there, you're out of there. But they're a huge tool. Even before we put a transducer on even before forward facing, these would have been huge for boat control. I
Oh,
imagine yourself going up to a rock point on Lake Winnebago to cast a crankbait,
yep.
and you've got a gentle breeze blowing into there, and instead of just spot locking and fan casting, now you can be actively hitting things at different angles just right, and
Yeah.
but keeping the back of the and your boat naturally wants to sit aligned with the wind.
Yep.
So now you're not fighting the wind, you're completely focused on the cast at hand. It's been one of the coolest add-ons to the boat I've made in years.
That's cool. It's a lot, lot to. I suppose that's a lot. You got more foot to work. Is it as a separate pedal alongside of the, or is there buttons, or how does that kind of work?
Just one button next to my trolling motor foot pedal, and it's it once your mechanics becomes once you're not thinking about the mechanics of doing everything else, it's just it's very easy. And now I find myself, if I'm out there playing around and I haven't deployed them, I'll find myself stomping on the switch and nothing's happening because I haven't put them in the water yet because I was just trying to fish the thing fast. That's how much my mind wants to keep working those things. So it's
Right.
really handy.
There is a lot of coordination that goes on with fishing. There's really a lot. I mean, if it's doing that, running your trolling motor, like your eyes, all that kind of fun stuff. When I saw you do the whole two rods, running the live scope, that was blew my mind. I couldn't even think of fathom to do all that stuff at once. I don't know how many times you had to how many times you had to crash to figure that out, but it's pretty
Well,
impressive.
I'm not immune to crashes, but I think one of the best ways you can get better is to fish after dark, because
Mm.
once um, that it puts you more into, you feel resistance differently,
Mm.
and you feel the boat differently. And if you can control your boat blind and still pull off good forward facing skills after dark, by the time the sun comes out and you can see the sploosh of where you cast, all of a sudden you're thinking, "Holy cow, this is really easy now,"
Yep.
but you got to push through it. And the same thing happened at night when I became a better troller thanks to beta knock and being nocturnal up there. Learning once all the lights go off,
Yep.
when you're pulling segmented lead core, if you're not making a good pass, one side's going to sag and drag, and one side's going to be up high if you're carving too much, and you start to learn how a boat feels when it's tracking right, and you feel the speed. You start to listen to the RPMs on the engine base. There's so many different things that you tune into, more so when the lights go down. And if you can improve your skill sets after dark, you're guaranteed to get much better during the day.
That's a really good tip. I like that.
Yeah.
So I got one more thing for you. If you were only able to go fishing one more time, where you going and who you taking?
Hmm. Probably probably beta knock with dad. That would do it.
Big
That'd
walleyes?
be good. Yep. For one bite on that eastern sand break
Mm,
during power hour. If I just saw that board go back there one more time, I'd be good.
that's cool. Yeah, there's so many magical places to fish.
Yeah, no
What,
doubt.
what's your favorite place?
Um, One that I haven't been to yet. That's what makes it. I that feeling on tournament day when you launch your boat and you get the
Yep.
butterflies and all that stuff. That I almost get it more now when I'm launching my boat on a brand new body of water for the first time. Like that's a magical feeling, and you don't know what to expect, and so everything is wide open at that point, and So but I really enjoy fishing something for the first time. Yeah, that's why the
Yeah.
Mississippi was so cool
Yeah.
because depending on the water level, even
Hmm.
if you've been to the pool before, it still feels brand new, you know?
That's true. Yeah. That
So
is very true. And it's weird. I mean, it's weird that growing up, we're roughly this. I'm a little older than you, but like all the fishing shows and the Walleye Insider and all the lakes, I don't remember this many great places to fish. We're catching. I've seen pictures of 14 and 15 pound walleyes come out of Lake Oahu pretty much every day now. You got the whole Missouri River system all the way up, banging Lake Erie here. Just so many places to fish. It's crazy.
it is, man. And there's only so much time, but life is short, so get out there while you can.
Heck yeah. Well, thanks for being on.
Well, thanks for having me. I didn't even know what we were going to talk about when you first asked. So, you ever
I
want to
just
dive into anything, just let me know, man. I'll be
Yeah,
around.
yeah, no problem. And if you're looking to be on an episode of Walleye Chronicles, hit me up on my socials, Matt Snell on Facebook and Instagram, and Smile and Fish on the TikTok. Remember, there's two things you can do every day to make somebody's day. One, give them a smile, and two, take them fishing.